everyone, thank you for coming back for another video. Today I wanted to talk about recovery. In the CFS community, there's always talk about recovery. Some people aim at recovery and some people don't like to think about it at all, and there's loads of reasons why. So in this video I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of aiming at recovery and what I'm aiming for, and if you don't want to aim at recovery, what should you aim at instead? Okay, so the first thing to say is not many people actually recover from CFS. There's no cure, so it's kind of just a waiting game of you hang around and see whether your body recovers or not. So the general accepted statistic is that about 5% of people recover. It depends what studies you look at, because some people claim up to 30% people recover and some people claim that no one ever fully recovers. So there's kind of some disagreement, but seemingly the average result of testing is around 5%. But it is suggested that though only 5% of people recover, a much higher percentage of people actually improve. They can't be classed as recovered, but they can be classed as improved. And I think that that's a really important distinction. So just remember, the fact is that it may look bleak with the very low statistics of how likely you are to actually recover, but that doesn't mean that your life is always going to be as hard as it is now. Lots of people make improvements, learn how to cope with their illnesses better, and actually work out how to have a good quality of life. So there are lots of studies that say if you are younger when you get the illness, you're more likely to fully recover. Especially if you're diagnosed as a teenager, you're more likely to be recovered within 2 to 5 years. This is something I never really believed in, to be honest. I was diagnosed around 6 years ago, and I am certainly not recovered. So 2 to 5 years didn't really work out. I think the second thing that needs to be addressed is, what is recovery? How do you measure it? How do you know when you're recovered? So you might measure recovery as being able to do things that normal people can do, but that's such a wide range of fitness levels and health levels. How are you going to define recovered? There's no finish line, and I think that's one of the main problems with the concept of recovery. No one's going to turn around and go, oh yes, you're CFS free. It doesn't work like that. You have to set an arbitrary line of where you're going to call yourself recovered, and maybe that's when you don't have symptoms anymore, or when you're physically fit enough to do something. But that might not be recovered. That might be a really good patch, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're recovered. There's not really a way to know for sure, and I think that's one of the problems with the concept of aiming at recovery, is that I feel like you're setting yourself up to be disappointed. If I look at how I was in 2016, I could barely walk, I needed help to get dressed, I couldn't wash my hair, I was very depressed, I was really struggling. If I compared that to 2019, that's just worlds apart. But I wouldn't have said I was recovered. I didn't have the physical fitness of a regular person. I was still on quite a lot of medication. I still didn't have the stamina. I still needed to sit down a lot. I wasn't recovered, certainly not. But if you'd offered that to 2016 me, that would have sounded like a dream of how well I was. And I think part of the problem with focusing on recovery is you don't appreciate the other progress. Like, I was so happy 2019, so happy, and I at that point had no complaints. You know, my health and my mental well-being was so great, and I didn't need any more recovery than that. That was enough for me. And I think that's where you should aim. You know, getting to that happiness. But, like I said, it's not permanent. I'm not as well as I was then. 2020 was a difficult year for us all, I'm sure, and I am significantly worse at the start of 2021 than I was at the start of 2020. Significantly worse, both with physical fitness and mental health and symptoms like pain and just everything. I'm significantly worse now. Am I anywhere near how bad I was in 2016? No, I'm nowhere near that bad. And this is still a dream, just 2016 me being this well. But I'm not as well as I was last year. So last year was the closest I've been to recovered, but it didn't necessarily last because the world changed, the situations changed, and things happened and my health went downhill. And, you know, I'm not really aiming at anything. And so I would prefer to be that well, because, you know, I was happier and life was easier, and getting things done was easier. But I'm not failing because I'm not aiming at anything. And I think that's possibly one of the problems with aiming at recovery, is that there's a possibility that you fail because you've got one goal and you might never reach it. And that doesn't mean that your life isn't enjoyable and happy, and doesn't mean that you're not the healthiest you've ever been, or the happiest you've ever been, or the most accomplished, or whatever, you've achieved all these things. It doesn't matter, because you were aiming at this one thing you haven't achieved. And I think I understand why people aim at recovery. Like, it makes so much sense, and it's such a dream, and of course I'd like that. But I think sometimes if you aim at something so strongly, you forget to see the other things that you have. And I think marking progress without defining yourself by it is really important. I was so happy when I walked a mile. That was a really big achievement. I can't walk a mile now, and that's not something, I'm not disappointed with myself. I'm not feeling like I've failed because I can't do that anymore, because I'm on a roller coaster. I go up and I go down, and sometimes it's really great and sometimes it's not, and you know, it is what it is. And you know, I find it easier to look at it that way. So, should you aim at recovery? In my opinion, and everyone has different opinions, and if you want to aim at recovery, like, absolutely go ahead. But in my opinion, I think you might be setting yourself up to be disappointed, because you can make all the progress in the world and still not think you're recovered, and therefore not see the great stuff you've got. There's no certain end. There's no, yes, I've accomplished this, tick it off. I worry that people will be disappointed that they can't achieve something they've been working towards, because actually a lot of it is not in your control. And if you can't achieve it, it doesn't mean you failed. But it for me, it would feel like that. Obviously, it's such a personal thing, and everyone needs to aim at what's best for them. But it's been 6 years, and honestly, I don't see this going away for me. Honestly, I see this being a forever thing. And you know what? If it does go away, it'll be a great, cherry on top. But that's not what I'm basing my life hopes on, If it doesn't go away, I still plan to have a productive and enjoyable life, you know. So what should you aim at instead of recovery? So if you decided you didn't want to aim at recovery, what should you aim at? And I don't think that getting rid of goals altogether is necessarily useful either. I think there's a balance, but I think your aim should be more concrete. Aiming at recovery is too loose, and how will you know when you're there? You need to aim at things that are solid. So, for example, in the past, I aimed at walking a mile, and that took me probably a year and a half of doing tiny walks every day where I couldn't get to the end of the street, and I live at number 4. So that tells you how close to the end of the street I live. I couldn't get to the end of the street, and after a long time of practicing, I got better, I got worse, you know, I made progress, and then we had to like cut down the walk again because it was, you know, taking too much out of me. Eventually, I walked a mile in one go, and that was amazing. That was an amazing day, and I can't do it anymore. But that achievement was so big, so momentous for me. And I think things like that, the solid goals, I think really show you your progress and show you that you can still do things. Your goal could be get a part-time job, or, you know, pass your A-levels. It could be well enough to look after a pet on your own, or start a small business. I think the things need to be concrete and achievable, something that's in your power, that you think you can achieve, and that doesn't rely on the mystical chronic illness gods deciding that yes, your body's not gonna, you know, flare up at some point, you know. Something that's tangible that you can tick off when you've done it. And I think the goals need to be based on how you can enrich your life. So the getting a pet example might be something you know, your goal is to be able to have an animal. Or when I was doing the walking, I was doing it so that when I went to university, I would be able to walk to my lectures on campus. Because going to university was a big dream of mine, so I had goals that would prepare me to go. I always had goals about cooking, learning. I also had goals about learning to cook, things that I'd missed out on learning because of my illness, you know. Things, I think goals should be headed towards enriching your life, making you feel like you're fulfilled and accomplished, and just really goals that will work towards your happiness. And you don't need to be recovered to be happy, which I think is the main thing that I learned over this process. You don't need to be healthy or able-bodied or recovered to be happy. A wonderful, fulfilling life. You just need to spend 5 minutes on a Facebook page about chronic fatigue to find out that people are parents and they are in long-term relationships and they have jobs and they're hard. All of those things are hard. I'm not saying they're easy, but you can fulfill your life goals, and you might have to edit them from what you thought, you know, when you were a child. One of my long-term life goals is to be a teacher, and realistically, will I be able to do full-time teaching? Unlikely. Maybe I will, but I think probably not. But part-time or even supply work, you know, there's ways to adapt your dreams. And I think your goals should be to work towards your long-term dreams, or I suppose short-term dreams. It doesn't have to be long-term dreams, but your goals should be focused on things that make you happy rather than being well. Because being well is not necessarily going to make you happy. What if you were well, what would you want to do? Work that out and then try and work out if you can do it anyway. That's that's my view on all this whole topic. I'm sure you have different views. If you disagree, do let me know. I would love to hear it if you think that I'm totally wrong, and how you go about aiming at recovery, if that is something you're working on. You know, I'm not the oracle of CFS. I'm just someone with an opinion, and so are you. So you can feel free to let me know your opinions. I really enjoy reading other people's opinions and how they approach their chronic illness. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, and don't forget to subscribe. We are now officially past 200 subscribers, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye! I do other stuff. What do I normally say?